Welcome to Echoes of the Lost Audiobook, where forgotten stories come to life. Dive into worlds of mystery, survival, and the unknown. If you enjoy our stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest audiobooks. Chap 56, Breath of the Dead Land. Ryder led the group deeper into the cold metal corridor beneath the gas forge, his right hand gripping the new spear still stained with the last monster's black blood, his eyes scanning the darkness ahead, where a sharp metallic screech echoed from afar, now joined by a new sound, a faint, whistling wind, like the breath of the dead land seeping through unseen cracks. The massive monster's corpse lay behind, its black blood pooling on the wet metal floor, releasing a thick, tangy stench that mingled with the cold air and musty earth scent from deeper within. The air grew heavier, humidity rising, leaving a sticky film on their skin, as if groundwater vapor seeped through the seams, making each breath cold and damp in his chest. The floor vibrated faintly beneath his feet, not just from their steps but from deeper tremors, as if the earth below stirred, accompanied by the steady drip of water from the ceiling, droplets hitting the floor, their soft, sharp patter cutting through the stillness. Lena stayed close, her left hand clutching her bandaged shoulder, dried blood a brown streak, her keen eyes sweeping the dark, her right hand gripping her old crude spear, her breath slowing in the damp air. Torin supported Mira behind, the young girl breathing deeper, her pale face showing faint resolve, though her lips trembled as the cold wind brushed her hair. Kalia brought up the rear, her heavy mace lowered in her right hand, her gaze fixed on the ceiling where water dripped, her left hand brushing the floor, feeling the dampness and vibrations. The corridor under Archive wasn't just a metal maze, it was part of the dead land, where harsh nature fused with the Seraphim's technology, testing them with both environment and foes. He pulled the Seraphim device from his bag, its red light blinking fast on the cold metal surface, the small screen showing a curt message: Archive, Ryder, the breathing earth is data. Survive its breath, or be swallowed by it, the trial doesn't stop. The words echoed in his mind, cold and cryptic, suggesting that not just monsters, but this very environment was part of the test. He opened his notebook, its pages crumpled and slightly damp from the air, his fingers brushing the rough surface as he wrote slowly, Day 41 North, below gas forge. Archive Phase 4, Corridor, Earth breathes, humidity plus wind. He paused, his dark brown eyes narrowing in the dark, listening to the whistling wind, soft but persistent, like air forced through a tight gap, blending with the metallic screech and water's patter. Breathing earth, he muttered, his low, hoarse voice merging with the wind, they're using nature against us too. He inhaled the cold air deeply, analyzing. High humidity sped the rust on the metal, the musty earth scent hinted at a natural cavern below, and the wind might signal an exit, or a new threat. Lena turned to him, her left hand still on her shoulder, her eyes flashing with caution as a gust of cold wind blew through, lifting her hair slightly. You hear that? She asked, her voice rough, stopping, her spear aimed into the dark ahead. Wind, where's it from? Air's wetter, it's harder to breathe. She took a deep breath, frowning as the dampness weighed on her chest, her gaze sweeping the ceiling, where water dripped faster, pattering like a small rain in the enclosed space. Ryder nodded, crouching, his right hand setting the spear on the floor, his left touching the metal, cold, slick, a thin film of water pooling from the drips. Winds from deeper in, he said, his voice low but certain, standing, pulling an old cloth from his bag, tying it to his spear's tip, and raising it, the cloth fluttered forward, confirming the airflow. There's a vent, or a machine pulling air. Humidity's up, the earth below's shifting. He scribbled fast in his notebook, light wind, high humidity, dripping water, vent or trap. He turned to the group, his voice clear, environment's changing, Earth's breathing, with wind and water. Go deeper, but watch the slick floor and that screech. Torin steadied Mira, his cloudy eyes flickering with worry as water dripped onto his shoulder, chilling him. Breathing earth? He asked, his voice slow and shaky, his arm tightening around Mira, as if the floor might give under the earth's weight below. Mira took a deep breath, the damp air making her cough lightly, but her eyes glinted with curiosity. Wind, maybe an exit, she whispered, her voice faint but hopeful, her hand brushing the wall, feeling the moisture seep through her fingers. Kalia stepped closer to Ryder, her heavy mace lowered, her gaze sweeping the ceiling. Water dripped faster, forming small puddles on the floor, reflecting the faint light from the hole behind. Humidity, like a cave, she said, her voice soft but keen, crouching to touch a puddle, sniffing lightly, musty earth mixed with burnt metal. Wind carries the monster's scent, it's closer. She frowned, turning to Ryder, her eyes tense but inquisitive, her hand gripping her mace, ready for what approached. Ryder frowned, stepping to the puddle, his right hand brushing it with the spear tip, cold, slightly slimy, like groundwater laced with the last monster's residue. A cave, or a deeper level, he said, his voice low, his eyes following the wind's path, the metallic screech nearer, joined by a new, deeper growl, stronger than before, the vibrations rippling the water on the floor. Earth breathes, but it's feeding something too. He wrote slowly in his notebook, slimy water, wind plus growl, earth shifting, new monster. He turned to the group, his voice taut, wind's guiding us, but there's a monster. Floor's slick, keep balance, be ready to fight. The Seraphim device buzzed hard, its red light flashing faster, and the cold, deep voice crackled through the speaker. Ryder, the Earth's breath is living data. Follow the wind, or be swept by it, the trial won't wait. The voice cut off, but the wind's whistle surged, carrying a skin-cutting chill, water dripping faster from the ceiling like a small rain, and the deep growl rumbled closer, the floor trembling beneath. Ryder froze, his eyes widening, his chest tightening as the human tone hit again. The Seraphim weren't just unleashing monsters, they wielded nature to force them into the next trial. He wrote quickly, his hands shaky, human voice, wind stronger, water plus growl, earth alive? He turned to the group, his voice firm, earth's changing, follow the wind, but be ready. It's coming. Lena gripped her spear tighter, her eyes flashing with anger and resolve, stepping forward through a puddle, her spear aimed into the dark. Cold wind, it's pushing us, she said, her voice low, taking a damp breath, her gaze fierce despite her shoulders' ache, ready to face it. Torin guided Mira over the slick floor, his voice trembling, this water, from where? Mira looked up, her weary eyes sharp, her hand clutching Torin's as water dripped onto her face. If there's wind, there's a way out, she whispered, her voice faint but resolute. Kalia stood beside Ryder, her heavy mace raised, her gaze locked on the dark where the growl echoed. Tang's stronger, she said, her voice soft, stepping slowly through a puddle, her hand gripping her mace, poised to swing when the monster appeared. Ryder led, his spear aimed forward, his eyes tracking the wind, the metallic screech blending with the growl, the floor's water rippling harder, a massive shadow emerging, red eyes blazing in the dark, bigger than before. There it is, he said, his voice low, the group closing ranks. Facing the breath of the dead land and the monster in the cold corridor. Chap 57-58, beneath the rain of dead earth. Ryder stood in the cold metal corridor beneath the gas forge, his right hand gripping the new spear, his eyes fixed on the darkness ahead, where the wind howled stronger, carrying a cutting chill and fine red dust swirling through the air. 2 days had passed since they felled the giant monster in Chap 55, and the corridor had shifted starkly, humidity spiked, water dripping from the ceiling now ran in thin streams, pattering onto the metal floor, forming slimy puddles mixed with red dust, like the blood of the dead earth seeping into the space. The distant metallic screech persisted, now laced with the gritty sound of falling earth and stone, as if a small rain from the depths poured through ceiling cracks. The air hung heavy, damp, carrying musty earth, burnt metal, and a faint tang from the old monster, making each breath cold and sticky in his chest. Lena stood beside him, her left hand clutching her damp bandage, her keen eyes sweeping the ceiling, her right hand gripping her old crude spear, her breath slowing in the moist air. Torin supported Mira behind, the young girl struggling to breathe in the thick humidity, her pale face showing faint resolve, her hand holding a small metal scrap to analyze the dust. Kalia stood near a puddle, her heavy mace lowered in her right hand, her gaze fixed on the red water streaming from the ceiling, her left hand scooping dust, sniffing for clues. The corridor under Archive was now a hybrid cavern, where harsh nature, earth, water, wind, merged with the Seraphim's tech, thrusting them into a new trial beneath the reign of dead earth. He pulled the Seraphim device from his bag, its red light blinking fast on the cold metal surface, the small screen showing a curt message: Archive, Writer, the weeping earth is data. Survive its tears, or sink in them, the trial demands adaptation. The words echoed in his mind, cold and unrelenting, confirming this environment, the reign of dead earth, was part of the experiment, and they had to adapt to endure. He opened his notebook, its pages wet from the air, his fingers brushing the rough surface as he wrote slowly, Day 43 North, below Gas Forge. Archive Phase 4, Corridor, Earth weeps, red water, dust. He paused, his dark brown eyes narrowing in the dark, listening to the howling wind and gritty earth, a small storm underground, red water flowing harder, carrying fine dust that hazed the air. Weeping earth, he muttered, his low, hoarse voice blending with the water's patter, they want us to live through this nature. He inhaled the damp air deeply, analyzing, near-saturated humidity, red dust with a metallic scent, slimy water hinting at organic decay from deep earth, like a rotting ecosystem. Lena turned to him, her left hand on her shoulder, her eyes flashing with caution as red water dripped onto her, soaking through her bandage, chilling her. You see it? She asked, her voice rough, crouching low, her spear aimed into the dark ahead. Red water, like blood, but from earth. Wind stronger, I can't see clear. She took a damp breath, frowning as dust stung her nose, her gaze sweeping the ceiling, where water ran in long streaks, like veins of the dead land. Ryder nodded, crouching by a red puddle, his right hand setting the spear on the floor, his left dipping into the flow, cold, slimy, fine dust particles staining his fingers red. Not blood, groundwater mixed with red earth dust, he said, his voice low but certain, standing, pulling an old cloth from his bag, holding it up, it whipped forward, soaked by the humidity. Strong wind, carrying dust, a bigger vent, or the earth's collapsing. He scribbled fast in his notebook, red water, earth dust, strong wind, vent or collapse. He turned to the group, his voice clear, earth's weeping, water, dust, wind rising. Follow the wind, but watch for collapse and visibility. Torin steadied Mira, his cloudy eyes flickering with worry as red water ran past his feet, chilling him. Weeping earth? He asked, his voice slow and shaky, his arm tightening around Mira, as if the floor might dissolve under the earth's rain. Mira took a deep breath, the humid air making her cough, but her eyes glinted with curiosity, rubbing red dust from her metal scrap. This water smells metallic, she whispered, her voice faint but sharp, like the monster, but older. She handed the scrap to Ryder, her eyes hopeful he'd analyze it. Kalia stepped closer, her heavy mace lowered, her gaze sweeping the ceiling. Red water streamed down, dust swirling in the wind, hazing the air like fog. "Wind strong, dust in my face," she said, her voice soft but keen, crouching to scoop red dust, sniffing, musty earth mixed with a faint tang. "Something died down here, long ago." She frowned, turning to Ryder, her eyes tense but inquisitive, her hand gripping her mace, ready for what lay ahead. Ryder frowned, taking the scrap from Mira, sniffing the red dust, burnt metal, a faint tang, like traces of the old monster fused with dead earth. "Groundwater from a deep layer, carrying organic remnants," he said, his voice low, his eyes following the wind, the metallic screech closer, joined by a heavy, deep growl, the vibrations rippling the red water hard, dust thickening the air. "Earth weeps, but it's birthing something too." He wrote slowly in his notebook, "Red water plus dust, old tang, growl, monster from Earth." He turned to the group, his voice taut, "Wind's guiding us, but a monster's near. Earth's collapsing, dust blinds, stay tight, be ready to fight." The Seraphim device buzzed hard, its red light flashing faster, and the cold, deep voice crackled through the speaker, "Ryder, the Earth's tears are living data. Overcome the rain, or be buried in it, the trial doesn't stop." The voice cut off, but the wind surged, whipping red dust thickly, red water pouring from the ceiling like true rain, and the deep growl rumbled nearer, the floor cracking faintly under the tremors. Ryder froze, his eyes widening, his chest tightening as the human tone hit. The Seraphim wielded both nature and monster against them. He wrote quickly, his hands shaky, human voice, "Wind plus dust, red water, growl, earth births monster." He turned to the group, his voice firm, "Earth's weeping, move through the rain, but be ready. It's here." Lena gripped her spear tighter, her eyes flashing with anger and resolve, stepping through a red puddle, her spear aimed into the dark. "Dust blinds, hard to see," she said, her voice low, taking a damp breath, her gaze fierce despite her soaked shoulder, ready to thrust. Torin guided Mira over the slick floor, his voice trembling, "This rain, how's it dangerous?" Mira looked up, her weary eyes sharp, her hand clutching Torin's as dust stung her eyes. "Red water, like Earth's alive," she whispered, her voice faint but resolute. Kalia stood beside Ryder, her heavy mace raised, her gaze piercing the red dust haze. "Growl, heavier," she said, her voice soft, stepping slowly through red water, her hand gripping her mace, poised to swing when the monster emerged. Ryder led, his spear aimed forward, his eyes cutting through the red dust. The deep growl drowned the wind, red water streamed hard, a massive shadow loomed, red eyes blazing, bigger than anything before. "There it is," he said, his voice low, the group closing ranks, facing the rain of dead earth and the monster in the cold corridor. Chap 59, Surviving the Dead Land. Ryder knelt in the cold metal corridor beneath the gas forge, his right hand gripping the new spear stained with the last monster's black blood, his eyes scanning its corpse a few meters away, a hulking creature, nearly 5 meters tall, hunched with metal claws and red eyes now dimmed. Its growl had faded, but the wind still whistled from deep in the corridor, carrying fine red dust and a cutting chill, now softer after the rain of dead earth in Chap 58. Red water from the ceiling had slowed, dripping onto the floor in small, streaky puddles, carrying a musty earth scent and faint tang, simple, but a reminder the dead land lived its own way. The air remained damp, less oppressive, with a strange dry grass scent wafting from the dark, a hint of life amid ruin. Lena sat beside him, her left hand off her now dry bandage, her weary but sharp eyes watching, her right hand resting her old crude spear on the floor, breathing slowly in the cold. Torin supported Mira near the wall, the young girl inhaling deeply, her pale face showing faint hope as distant insect chirps reached her, her hand holding a small metal scrap to analyze. Kalia knelt by a red puddle, her heavy mace set down, her gaze fixed on a small moss patch on the wall, her left hand picking a clump, sniffing its grassy scent. The corridor under archive was a dead land laced with life, wind, water, and tiny creatures that could sustain them, if they knew how to use them. He pulled the Seraphim device from his bag, its red light blinking steadily, the small screen showing a curt message, Archive, Writer, the living earth is data. Use its life, or die in it, the trial demands skill. The words echoed in his mind, cold and clear, suggesting that beyond fighting, surviving this environment was the true test from the Seraphim. He opened his notebook, its pages slightly damp, his fingers brushing the rough surface as he wrote slowly, Day 44 North, below Gas Forge. Archive Phase 4, Corridor, Living Earth, Moss plus Insects. He paused, his dark brown eyes narrowing in the dark, listening to the soft wind and chirping, like small crickets hidden in wall cracks. Living Earth, he muttered, his low, hoarse voice blending with the wind, they want us to use it to live. He inhaled the cold air deeply, analyzing, grassy moss scent, insect chirps signaling food, and red water, though tangy, potentially filterable with skill. Lena turned to him, her left hand off her shoulder, her eyes flashing with curiosity at the insect sounds. You hear that? She asked, her voice rough, standing slowly, her spear aimed at the wall where the chirps came. Insects, in this dead land? Can we use them? She took a cold breath, frowning as the grassy scent drifted by, her gaze sweeping the moss on the wall, seeking more signs of life. Ryder nodded, stepping to the wall, his right hand setting the spear down, his left touching the moss, soft, damp, pale green mixed with red earth, growing in metal cracks. Moss, edible, if not toxic, he said, his voice low but certain, scraping some with his spear tip, sniffing, grassy, not tangy. Insects are food, small, but protein. He knelt, pressing his hand to the floor near a crack, feeling faint vibrations. A tiny cricket, 2 centimeters long, crawled out, chirping weakly. He caught it, holding it up, earth-brown, alive. Earth crickets, edible. He scribbled fast in his notebook, grassy moss, earth crickets, survival food? He turned to the group, his voice clear, living earth, moss and insects are food. Find more, filter water if we can. Rest, but listen. Torin sat Mira down, his cloudy eyes flickering with surprise as Ryder held the cricket. Edible, really? He asked, his voice slow, his arm tight around Mira, as if she'd balk at the idea. Mira took a deep breath, the cold air sharpening her, her weary eyes brightening at the moss. Moss. I saw it in old caves, she whispered, her voice faint but keen, cooked, it's like greens. She touched the red puddle, frowning, this water, filter it with cloth? Kalia stood, her heavy mace aside, her gaze sweeping the wall, moss grew sparsely, more crickets crawling from cracks. Crickets, I can catch, she said, her voice soft but sharp, crouching to grab one, holding it up, it chirped faintly in her hand. Moss, can we cook it with fire? She frowned, turning to Ryder, her eyes tense but trusting, picking more moss, sniffing its grassy scent again. Ryder nodded, setting the cricket down, pulling an old cloth from his bag, dipping it in the red puddle, water seeped through, leaving red grit behind, clearer, less tangy. Filterable, cloth catches sediment, he said, his voice low, analyzing fast, moss could be eaten raw, crickets roasted for food, red water needed another pass to drink. Fire's tough, metal's wet, no wood. Eat moss raw, roast crickets with scrap heat. He picked a broken metal rod nearby, scraped more moss, then found a small scrap, a rusted pipe, heatable by friction. He wrote slowly in his notebook, filter red water, raw moss, roast crickets, survival skills. He turned to the group, his voice taut, use it, moss raw, crickets roasted, water filtered. Prepare, but hear the screech. The seraphim device buzzed hard, its red light flashing faster, and the cold, deep voice crackled through, Writer, the living earth is new data. Live by skill, or die without it, the trial doesn't wait. The voice cut off, but the metallic screech echoed again from afar, closer, with faint floor tremors, a new threat sign. Ryder froze, his eyes widening, his chest tightening at the human tone. The seraphim demanded they not just fight, but survive this dead land. He wrote quickly, his hands shaky, human voice, moss plus crickets, screech near, skill or fight? He turned to the group, his voice firm, they're forcing us to live, eat moss, roast crickets, filter water. Rest, but be ready to fight. Lena grabbed a moss clump, chewing, grassy, slightly bitter, but swallowable. Tolerable, she said, her voice low, gathering more, her gaze fierce despite exhaustion, ready to press on. Torin steadied Mira as she knelt, his voice trembling, crickets, really? Mira looked up, her weary eyes sharp, catching a cricket from a crack. Roasted, it's like meat, she whispered, her voice faint but resolute, handing it to Ryder. Kalia caught 2 more crickets, setting them on the broken rod, her gaze fixed on the dark where the screech sounded. Roast fast, screech is close, she said, her voice soft, gripping her mace, poised for the monster's approach. Ryder heated the pipe with friction, roasting a cricket, a faint burnt scent rose, it curled, edible. Survive, he said, his voice low, sharing moss and crickets with the group, his eyes tracking the screech. The dead land gave them sustenance, but brought new trials too.